Oh, good morning, everybody. If you weren't here, I will again say, I don't know why I even say these things anymore. It always seems like there's something. Uh, my mom, who has been in a rehab facility for a little over a month, came home today at 9 o'clock. I found out yesterday afternoon that that was going to be happening. So there's been a fair amount of frenetic movement going on this morning. Thankfully, she arrived about half an hour sooner than I was anticipating her arriving, which meant that I had an extra 30 minutes to kind of pad out my schedule and take some breaths as necessary. So that's where I'm at this morning. I hope that you guys are in perhaps a more calm place than that. So I do have an agenda today. Such as it is. The first thing is I do want to go over, we did not meet as the cataloging interest group last month because that falls on the same day as the cataloging committee, and they did a lot of work. Some of you may have been there for the committee meeting. I know some of you are committee members, so you were definitely there. But some of you may not, and this does impact cataloging across Evergreen, Indiana. And so we do want to take a look and see what work was either done or what was talked about, what's in the works. We'll talk a little bit more about the upcoming annual conference, which is going to be on August the 26th. As part of that, and with help from the cataloging committee, we'll include the cataloging refresher as part of that. Then it will be recorded and also available to others who can't make it to the conference, because not everybody can. I do want to talk about the parts project, that being the monographic parts and video discs specifically, and where we're at with that and how you can help and how we need you to help. And then also an update on training for advanced cataloging. A lot of these things I did talk about with the cataloging committee, but again, it was for the committee, and I want those of you who are catalogers but may not have been there to get the same information, and then to show you the progress that's being made on the training manual. I've been working on that for the past week after the cataloging committee and others have been working on it for months and months and months. My job has just been compiling and editing. So if at any point during this, first of all, this is an interest group, which it's a round table. And so if you have something to say, you are invited to say it, whether it be using your microphone, which you can turn on, or putting it into chat. At the same time, if you have a question about what is being talked about, same goes. Feel free to use your microphone to put questions into chat. And I'm paying attention to chat. I have that opened actually on another screen. So, all right. Anything anybody wants to say before we get going? And I am looking at some faces. So if you shake your head, I'm taking that as an answer. I see you shaking your head, Monica. I'm going to actually, I do like to see faces for this. I know this is a bit of a meeting online. It has benefits and challenges. And as somebody that is a pretty social person, I do miss the kind of nonverbal cues that you get from just having a discussion with human beings. So I try to, if you are comfortable having your camera on, I value that, but don't feel like you're obligated to do that for me. Anyway, okay, the cataloging committee. So I'm just actually pulling up the agenda, and I'm gonna do this and see, because this, I'm going to make it a little bigger for you and a little darker for me there's no good excuse other than I'm just kind of tired this morning from all the things. So a couple of things from here that I just want to touch on, and we're going to go through a few of the other things. There was a lot of discussion on ways to handle unusual series headings and documentation, and if things are parts of multiple series, and how that is reflected in the 490 and the 8XX in the MARC record. And so some documentation was put together by Britta Dorsey from Thorntown, and that has gone around and it will make its way into the procedures manual, or the cataloging procedures guide. In the same way, there was also discussion about parts being used for things that have mixed formats. And so that if there is and people on the committee, please correct me if I'm wrong. This is what I'm remembering, but I don't have a specific case in mind right now. I believe these are things that are sold. They have, of course, that one MARC record to rule them all, but may include a book, a DVD, a CD, or something like that, that the library is choosing to circulate separately, and then how parts are established for those parts of that one thing, that complex whole, and how that would be reflected in the procedures guide as well. There was a discussion also about audiobook parts. Parts are one of those things, and I don't think anybody in here would dispute that even if you find them to be an easy concept for you, you know that they are not an easy concept for everyone. And across Evergreen, Indiana, the use of parts has been pretty consistent. It has not always been pretty. And so figuring out all those little nuances in such a way that catalogers are kind of nuancing in the same direction and in a standard way, so that people can find what they're looking for and they can place holds on what they actually want from the catalog. And so audiobooks, one of the issues that has arisen with them is that, of course, generally audiobooks have multiple discs, and parts are being established for each of those discs, or not necessarily each of those discs, even if that's not how they were circulated. And so that there would be more clarification in the procedures guide, that the only time that parts should actually be created for audiobooks is if you have an audiobook that is split into sections to circulate in separate sections. And then if that is the case, if your library decides that you want to split one of those Diana Gabaldon books in half, you have then the two parts, first half, second half, however that's being documented in there. But there are other libraries that may have chosen not to do that, that you contact them and say, we have established parts, there's going to need to be another part created that says all discs. And because once parts have been established for a record, anything that is not assigned parts is going to go into that leftover thing called all unassigned parts, which means essentially nothing to our patrons. They don't understand those mechanisms, and not just our patrons, also oftentimes our circulation staff, or reference staff, whoever is helping our patrons actually place those holds. We need to make sure that the parts that are available there make sense. And so there are going to be libraries that are going to circulate the whole book, and there needs to be then a part established that says the whole thing, so that those, and not necessarily that semantics, but so that people know what they're placing holds on. Any questions so far? And if you wanna go down a rabbit hole with parts, I'm up for it. But if you don't, I completely understand. Checking chat, looking at faces. Okay, I'm moving on. The next thing that is on the agenda for the cataloging committee, we did table this a little bit. We tabled it from the March 4th meeting. I don't have the minutes actually here for this. So I don't remember when we've talked about conjoined items. We have talked about conjoined items with Anita Brown a lot. It might have been at the cataloging committee meeting. So I'm not sure. Sarah brings up a good point. One thing I think people may not understand about DVD parts is that they are required even if your library's items are not holdable. That is correct. Thank you. So Anita is going to be, she doesn't know it yet because we haven't made the announcement. Anita is going to be presenting at the Evergreen Indiana Annual Conference on conjoined items. She might have been, I don't know if browbeaten is the right phrase. She might have been coerced from multiple corners to present on her library's use of conjoined items. It is a cool tool. The way that they have used it is atypical and really creative and completely within the bounds. And so it's exciting the way that they have done it and how they're managing conjoined items. Conjoined items being this kind of, how do I want to say this conceptual item, but it doesn't really. It's kind of an umbrella item that contains things that have multiple records in there. So say you have a record for a Winnie the Pooh cake pan, and I'm completely making this up, so who knows where this is going to go. An audio book about Tales from the 100-Acre Woods, a puzzle from your kids collection that has the full picnic from Winnie the Pooh. Obviously, this is dated. I remember that poster being on my wall when I was 5. And then putting this all together in a conjoined item that can circulate as one thing, as opposed to creating a record for like a kit or something like that. The way that Kendallville is using it is they're essentially using it as a way to hold items that are on lists, whether it be like a new items list or an award winners list or something like that, so that somebody can search for that item, that conjoined item, and they can see all of the things that are essentially in that item. And then I don't want to take all of, I'm not going to share the entire presentation. That's not the entire presentation anyway, but she's going to talk more about that in August. And maybe between then, if you like get her in a dark corner in an alley. Okay, I'm going to skip over to the extra spaces and mark records. That is something that is happening when things are imported, I believe through the Z3950 and possibly through the batch import. And there has been talk at this administrative level, as well as with committee members, etc., on automatic ways to get rid of those spaces that are messing things up. But then also ways for catalogers to be conscious that this is happening and possibly correct them before they actually make it into or remain live in the bibliographic database with these errant spaces that are causing some bad behavior by records. I'm going to skip the next thing real quick. It has, again, to do with parts and combo packs, and it's a pretty nuanced discussion, but it's necessary. Before I go forward, anything else that anybody wants to say? We do have multiple committee members here and other active interested parties, and definitely everybody that's here obviously is somebody that's either a cataloger or interested in cataloging. So please feel free to weigh in, ask questions, say things. I'm going to take a drink real quick. Okay. Okay. So the next thing I have on here is the Evergreen, Indiana annual conference, and I want to check something real quickly. And I'm going to check it in my other screen, so pardon me while I move things around real quick. In theory, and see if I can see what I need to see. Okay, so we put a call for session proposals out. The first deadline was yesterday for that, and we're going to be extending it. You guys are the first to know if Keith didn't send something out yesterday. I was out of the office. I believe he was out of the office as well, so he probably didn't. We're going to be extending that until next Wednesday. So I believe that is the 7th. The hope is to get at least 12 sessions for people to choose from. So far, we have 10. So we're in pretty good stead, and at least half of those are going to have some type of cataloging bent to them. So there is going to be, and I'm kind of cheating just a little bit here, a session on maps, on using the serials module, on conjoined items, on inventory, which is kind of that space in there for both cataloging and patron services, and inventory is that, yeah, it touches every aspect of librarianship. And then, oh, that's interesting. Sorry, I just saw another one in there. Then we're also going to be talking again about parts and looking at some of the new things from the cataloging committee in terms of those things mentioned on the agenda, as well as the parts project. So there will be a lot. Yes, Monica, we'll be using the serials module. Again, we haven't really announced who these are going to be, but it has been started and we have been working with one. And so we'll be talking about a full-blown pilot for that. that will start probably in September. Immediately following the annual conference. So all that to say, there are going to be a lot of opportunities to learn cataloging things at the conference. Okay, I'm going to get back to this right here. Okay, any questions, comments, concerns, etc. about the annual conference? I will remind you that it is a free continuing ed thing. You'll have the opportunity to earn up to at least 4 LEUs or TLEUs, and there'll be free food. It's 1 day. I'm trying to think how else, with my very unenthusiastic voice, I can convince you this is something that you really, really want to do. We have not had an in-person conference now for at least 2 years, and it's time to get back. This is not at its normally scheduled time. Normally this would be in March, but of course we had to postpone that because of COVID. And so we'll also be deciding how we get back on the regularly scheduled thing, whether we wait a full 18 months or we do it again in 6 months. So I don't know the answer. We haven't begun those discussions yet because there are a lot of other things going on. Before I talk about the parts project, I do want to talk very briefly, and I don't have this on the agenda, about upcoming server updates and catalog freezes. I'm trying to think how so first of all, the servers are going to go down this weekend for hopefully only 1 day. I believe that Keith put that out in his update, that the servers will be coming down as we prepare for a new server case, a physical server to come online, a new one. It is going to replace our main app server, utility server, and we had hoped, we actually have 3 new servers that are in this year's process. We had hoped that the other 2 would have arrived by then, but as with everything else these days, there have been some supply chain issues. And so it's not supposed to arrive until the middle of next week. So those are not going to come online. The reason I say that is one of those 2 servers that has not arrived is a database server. And so over Labor Day, hopefully, is the goal to bring those other 2 servers online, which will involve bringing a new database server online, which should hopefully significantly help even more what this new server that's coming online this weekend should also help. So we should see some faster search, some things that had previously timed out should hopefully not time out anymore. Yes, faster searches. The other thing that I would really like to encourage you to do, I know that the experimental catalog in 3.4 is, I want to say it's broken. It was experimental at that point. And it doesn't do all of the things that certified catalogers need to do. It doesn't. And all of the interfaces were not completely dialed in at that point. But I would encourage you to get in there if you have not and start messing around with it just so that you know where things are at, so you have some idea of how it should be working, because when we upgrade to 3.7, which is the goal sometime around Thanksgiving, that is a much more feature-rich staff catalog that will be the default at that point. So we'll be going from what we have traditionally seen as the staff catalog that looks essentially like the OPAC and then has different catalog views, to the dedicated staff catalog that looks significantly different, has significantly faster searches, just blazing searches. Jonathan, in the experimental catalog, no, it does not have a box to filter out electronic resources. In the upcoming versions of it, it does. And that's why I say there are things that are definitely missing in the 3.4 version that have since been figured out. The other thing that I would encourage you to do, and let me get there real quickly. And when I say real quickly, that means I have to think real quickly, and that's probably not going to happen. Is you can always go to one of these community servers, and you'll see that there are credentials in there that allow you to log in. These use the Concerto database, and I'm trying to see if there's an easy link here. Of course there isn't, so let me get that as well. Yeah, I'll just go with this. I have another one, but so this provides you with information for both staff accounts and for patron accounts if you log into this community server. And the reason that one of these community servers, the reason that I encourage you to do that, you can see this is 3.7. That's actually not 100% true. This is latest. So this is a little bit further than 3.7, not a whole lot. But you can get in there and you can see what those interfaces look like, and you can kind of fuss around with them. Now, keep in mind, this does not have a full production database with it. I mean, you're not going to find the millions of records that we have. You're not going to have necessarily realistic scenarios for the patrons that exist in there. Some of them are an approximation of what humans would look like actually in here. But the other thing to keep in mind is that none of the holdings in the Concerto data set have circulation modifiers. So they don't behave as actual circulatable things necessarily, but the interfaces are something that you may find valuable. Okay, so I did want to let you know about those upgrades. Let me actually get back. Okay, the parts project. I had some big plans to show you what I've been working on with this, and all of it to say, how do I say this? It is an incredibly overwhelming task. So I had to narrow it down. I get a weekly report on all of the items that have in the database that have parts assigned to them, or should have parts assigned to them. And I do some filters on it. And so when I initially got it, I think it was like 450,000 records, something like that, which of course in my mind, I have zero concept of 450,000 records until I like foolishly said, I'm going to start parsing this out into something that's manageable, and realize that I don't actually have the brain capacity for as long enough time as I need to have it to do that. So then I was like, okay, I'm going to pull something out of it. So I then decided I was going to pull the transiting media out of it, since that's really, in terms of this, what we would want to focus on first, because these are things that people are placing on holds from throughout the consortium. Libraries have made a decision that they want to share them throughout the consortium if they have those circulation modifiers. And so that did bring the number down to 150,000 things that need to be addressed in some manner, that are transiting media but don't have parts assigned to them yet. So I left off on Tuesday afternoon, having decided I was going to parse them out in one way, and then realizing I don't think that's the right way to go. So I'm going to revisit it again. And I think that what I'm going to do is I'm going to break it all out specifically by library and contact the individual libraries that have items that need to have parts assigned to them, and let them do it, rather than throwing a bunch of things. And maybe it will be in buckets. Probably will be in buckets. The reason that I decided it wasn't going to be is I was actually trying to load 1,000 record files into item status to put in buckets. That doesn't work real well. And then I thought, well, I could break it. No, I'm sorry, it was 10,000 record files. And then I was like, maybe I could break it into 5,000. And of course, the smaller it gets, the more times I have to do this. So it's either the front end or the back end that it just takes forever to do. So that's kind of where that is at. All that to say that there are 150,000 records for transiting media, items with transiting media, whether it be transiting video disc, transiting video disc new, transiting video disc rated R, or transiting video disc rated R new, that should have parts assigned to them and don't. So if there's anybody in here from those libraries, or don't know if you're from those libraries, you may want to take a look, because I'll get another report next week, and maybe if it says 100,000, that would be great. Charles has asked for some clarification. Does this mean records that have no parts assigned at all, or not every item on the record has parts assigned? It's a little bit of both. So that was one of the things that I had not gone through and done all the things, because again, it is 150,000 records, and it's not something that shows up in the report. So from my pretty light research, it looks to be that mostly, and this I believe based on the way things have gone, it's mostly not every item on the record has parts assigned. And because, and this is where I start supposing, there have been some libraries that are very diligent about getting parts applied to or assigned to their video discs, and then others who haven't. And so, and that is what I've seen. And of course, when we're talking about media, in most cases, those are popular items that multiple libraries have. Also, there aren't a whole lot of different records for each one. So, I mean, there may be a few, but not the same as there would be like for The Hobbit, where there are, yeah, any number of MARC records out there. It tends to be a little bit more efficient when it comes to DVDs, Blu-rays, and things like that. So I don't know how Anna did it, quite frankly. I have to imagine either she came up with some amazing magical workflow that I haven't happened across at this point, or she had the stamina of a god. I don't, it has to be one or the other. Because it is just a massive thing. And I will say too, that is an amazing number of records, and so much work has been done. This is not to disparage the work by any of you or the catalogers throughout the consortium. It is a huge project. Yeah, as Sarah says, we just don't have time to work on projects like this right now. I get that, and it's I get it. I guess it's just the best way to say it. There are some ways that I can help, hopefully, in the future. I don't know what they are yet, though. I'm kind of, I tend to rely on that moment of aha, where like, oh, nope, that's a brick wall. Nope, that's a brick wall. Nope, that's a brick wall. Oh my gosh, that door opens. And so I haven't quite found that door opening yet, but I also have not yet lost hope on it. So that's parts. I feel like I need to take another drink right now, but ooh. Yeah. So I'm going to just read through here. Laura says, I think that's a great idea, sending them out to individual libraries. I've been working a parts project for Morgan County for over a year whenever I have extra time. Karen says, I know our collection is not done. I don't have a lot of free time either, but I will work on it as I can. Sarah, I put a lot of work in on it when I work from home a lot, but we still have thousands of old DVDs and Blu-ray that need parts. And Monica says, that's understandable, but I think there are still new items being added to the catalog that don't have parts assigned. Yes, that is definitely a huge thing. And I think that so one of the things that I have found as I've been going through this is ways that I need to change in the way that I talk specifically about parts when we're doing training. So the way that it has traditionally been said, this is what parts are, this is how you do this, blah, blah, blah. I think that I need to focus a lot more on why that needs to happen and when it needs to happen. The hows, of course, are important. What the heck are parts? That's important. But knowing the why is going to allow people to make those decisions on their own, not questioning. It's not just like a rote task. It actually has meaning behind it. And when is going to allow them to plan that workflow better as well. So this is theoretical. I'm hoping that that is the case. Okay, I'm going to go on to the asynchronous training for advanced cataloging. So I am focusing on advanced cataloging for the asynchronous training rollout again. It's been rolled out before, but roll out again because it is such a large class with, it is a full course in terms of content, and has a lot of things that go along with it in terms of certification, in terms of permissions and bibliographic database access and all of those things. And it would be very nice for those people who need to take it to be able to take it within a time span, as opposed to spending essentially 2 days doing that and then coming out with context as opposed to competency. context is important to build competency, but it's kind of unfair to say, okay, you've done this advanced cataloging class, you now have touched or at least watched somebody touch all of the interfaces. Now, hey, go out there and make sure that you know how to do batch imports and overlay. And by the way, there's a bug over there in that interface. It's just an unrealistic and unfair thing. And so having the asynchronous training can allow people to take a breath, take a break, ask questions via email or whatever, if they get to a point, and build on those skills. I am also waiting for the full customization of the training server, which is working now, but doesn't have all of our 3.4 customizations built into it yet. So that I'm hoping that that will be very soon. I keep saying that. It's not something that I can do anything about, so I'm very hopeful. And then that will be an essential component as part of that asynchronous training. To start with, it's going to be utilizing a combination of YouTube videos, Google Docs and forms, and kind of all pieced together. I have been investigating Niche Academy. We had a little bit of a buzzkill with them that just stemmed from a typo, but it was a pretty expensive typo. So I'm hoping that that doesn't completely tank our enthusiasm for what is actually a really great platform. If that doesn't work, I will dive back into plugging things into Moodle, which I have to tell you, I hate Moodle. It's so finicky, but if it's the tool we have, it's the tool we have. Okay. I'm going to stop for a second. Charles makes a great comment. Experience can make things less scary over time. It's true. And Sarah, yes, I think showing people what the hold screen looks like for appropriately and inappropriately done parts is a very helpful demonstration. Yes. Yes, definitely is. Okay, so I'm going to just briefly show you the training manual update. This is specifically the cataloging training manual courses. So I'm going to start by just reminding you where the training manuals are at. First of all, you go to blog.evergreen.lib.in.us and go to member resources, training manuals, and then you see this list, and you see then the cataloging training manual. And if you open that up, you see this, and it is a partial list of chapters for things that you can do. We have removed the links to the old staff client, and yeah, but the cataloging committee has been working diligently, and let me get back to the right folder. I'm going to scoot this over real quick. Actually, I think I'm going to scoot this whole folder so you can see the work that has been going on here. Karen makes a great point. Parts are confusing for circulation when placing a hold as well. Yes. Okay, so this is every chapter that, whether it is linked over here or not, that the cataloging committee has been working on, all towards this goal being an actual compiled cataloging training manual. Let me actually go back, turn this dark reader off so you can get a better look at that. And kind of shrink that down just a little bit. So a couple things have changed about this. First of all, the catalog numbers in this document are unnecessary, and so those have been removed. But then this is all of the content, including those things that are not added in here. There are actually a couple more chapters than there were previously. There's one more that needs to be written, and that has to do with the staff catalog views. So you can see, and also there's some editing that needs to be done here. There we go. But all of these things then because this is a Google Doc, you can use the outline mode to generate these jump links over here. There is just a little bit more work, and let me see if I can find a good example of what I'm looking for here. Of course, it's, yeah. So I'm going to ignore that. There are links all throughout here to either go to different chapters or sections within the manual. These all link to all the headings link back. So the goal is to be an easy to navigate training manual that doesn't require, for instance, if you were to go into holds in this, you're in one document. Then if you wanted to go into something else that was related, you would have to go back. First of all, that doesn't open in a new thing. And so we want this to be much more easy to navigate. So there's just probably another 2 or 3 days of work to go into this as far as formatting, and then that final the staff catalog views. This is going to be new, and it's going to reflect the fact that there are 2 sets of staff catalog views right now. There's the one that we're used to that begins with the OPAC, has our mark view and mark edit, and then holdings and holds, conjoined items, monographic parts. And then in the experimental catalog, they're mostly the same, but there are some differences to that, as well as they look different, and some of the things are in the other way. Monica says it will also make using the Control F better because it can search the whole menu at once. Yes, and I will say I've used the Control F multiple times in editing this. So that's been very, very helpful for me just as an editing thing. It has also allowed, as I've been going through here, to see how do I say? Because there are multiple people that were writing content for this, they were formatting sometimes in different ways. So having a cohesive format for it, this also highlights that. It allows to have the voice be more consistent, because you see when there's a difference in voice, and so then it can be that can be updated a little bit. So we'll see. I'm very hopeful that this is a good next step for the cataloging training manual to make it more useful for all of y'all and me and all of us. Yes, and using the Control F in the procedures guide. Yes. This is, again, the first step to seeing this type of thing for all of the manuals, and having them all have a similar structure to one another and be an expected experience for people who are accessing our local documentation. Okay, it's 10:50. I have talked a whole lot. Thank you for everybody that's provided feedback. I appreciate it. Any questions? They don't have to be about what has been discussed here today. It could be about anything cataloging related, please. I don't think I can switch gears into another mode this quickly, but I'll try for you anything? If not, we can call it. And you guys can have a great day and go work in your libraries and stuff. Or go home if that's what your day's got mapped out for you. Or stay home if you're at home. I don't know. Charles, I want to go home. Well, my mom just arrived from the nursing home, so I'm good right here. I'm good in the office. We're good. You guys have a great day. Thank you for being here. And I will attempt to get LEUs out to you by the 1st of next week, because that seems realistic as opposed to tomorrow, which doesn't. Thank you.